day in the pub, Seb and Verity were socialising with hilarity.
They knew there and then that their options were vast. They bought some equipment and made a podcast.
What do you think you are doing, you twits? It's cliched and obvious, you know.
If this doesn't work well, then we'll call it quits. But right now, just listen to our show.
It's called Three in a Bar.
We'll talk to musicians about their lives so far.
Three in a bar. We hope that you like it, okay? Hooray!
Hey, hello.
Hi, I'm Verity Simmons.
And I'm Seb Philpott. And this is Three in a Bar.
Oh, it is. It is. Thanks
Yeah,
for coming
it is.
back again and seeing
Thanks.
us, hearing us, rather.
Yeah. Thanks for smelling us and for tasting us. That's weird. Sorry.
Very creepy. Episode 19.
Is it 19
Yes,
already?
it is. We're coming to
Wow.
the end of our teens.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that's appropriate. It's not really. For someone
in
that's
what
worked, well, someone that's worked heavily in children's theatre.
Oh, yes. I see where you're going with
There's a
this.
slight link there. My brain leapt to that for some reason.
No, that's good.
And I lent into it. Who is it? Well, I already know who it is because because I'm describing her already. Her name is Laura Bangay.
Yeah. Laura
Yeah.
Bangay, who is MD, musical director extraordinaire, and
Yeah.
children's musical director as well. She has worked extensively with kids on massive shows
Yeah.
like Matilda.
Yes.
And she did, I was going to say Somewhere Over the Rainbow, the song from The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, she did The Wizard of Oz. Sorry, that was very long-winded.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I first met her doing Matilda, and she. I mean, what a great job that
Yeah.
is to be involved in that. But the sort of whole machine of training up all these kids,
Yeah.
4 times a year they do it. A whole new batch of Matildas and Bruces and
Yeah.
all the other ones. Loads of the kids, and they have 4 casts
Yeah.
for at any one time. So
It's an immense
So-
job. I mean,
yeah.
you'd have to really, you'd have to be really brilliant at working with children, but obviously, but also have the patience of a saint, wouldn't you?
Yeah. But I think she loves it, and she's inspired by the kids, and she's
Yeah.
a lovely person to be around. So
Yeah, she really is.
she's perfect for that. We worked with her last year on Evita
Yes.
at Regent's Park.
She was
So,
basically my desk partner on that. She was playing.
Oh yeah, you
she
guys
was,
were the back corner.
Yeah, we were at the back of the bus. It was great. And she was absolutely hilarious. She talks a little bit about it in this interview, but she had this accordion because she was cover MD and she was also playing keys 2 on it. And so she also had to play this blooming accordion. And face it, they had a bit of a love-hate relationship.
Well, we recorded this one back in June, so it was still sort of lockdown-y kind of era.
Yeah.
Just to give you some context.
Into it, quite far into lockdown, wasn't it? So
Yeah, that's right.
Laura had done her time, and
She'd
as
really
she
done her
alludes
time.
to.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it, shall we? This is the chat we had with Laura Bangay.
Laura, just before we started, were you still doing Boy in the Dress at the time, or had that finished?
No, we just finished.
Oh.
So I'd got home, we'd all moved home, and then it was the week after. So all the other plays that were in the season that were there didn't get to finish their runs. But we just timed it perfectly.
God, that's amazing, isn't it? That you got to the
yeah.
end. Hooray!
Yeah.
Did you love it? How was that?
It was amazing. It was brilliant and stressful, like all the best things are, I think.
Yeah.
And just making a new musical from scratch is crazy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was quite intense, and especially a new musical that's led by children, because it means that your workload is like already 4 times more, because I was doing all the kids' music on it, and because everything's quadruple or triple cast, you're always maintaining or fixing or doing stuff. And we have one boy whose voice broke, so we had to put a new child into the show.
Bless him.
So, you know, it was long hours, and I mean, it was brilliant. We had such a lovely time, and like, it was so fun to play. The music's is Guy Chambers and Robbie Williams. The music is just like so fun. And Alan Williams did an amazing job with sort of making it into what it became.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah, fingers crossed it's got another life.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed about everything, I think. But it was amazing. And just the band and the company, it was one of the nicest groups of people I've ever worked with. And I think with a different group of people, it could have been a really stressful, horrible experience, but everyone was so supportive and so like behind the piece that it just was really joyful, actually, once we got into it.
Oh, that's great. Were you in from the beginning then, Laura?
Yeah, I was one of the first people brought on to the project. So, because I'd been working at the RSC for a couple of years, and obviously I'd done Matilda for a long time.
Yeah.
And so Bruce O'Neill, who's head of music there, we had a meeting, and he said, we've got this project in a couple of years, which I think would be great for you, but it's going to be quite sporadic for a bit, because it was just workshops every now and then. And then we'll sort of get into it all. So I think I was the only person, apart from the director, that was at the first read through of just the script.
Wow.
There were no songs that existed. And then we had a workshop on the songs, and we basically got this. It's Robbie Williams doing all the demos. And so Robbie was like singing every single song as every character. So like, and it was just this kind of crazy, very private Robbie Williams album that we all got to listen to.
That's great.
And then we
still got that.
And then we started to shape it, and because they were sort of very standalone pop songs and pop structures. So then we started to shape it into a more theatrical structure, and also make it suitable for kids to sing, because there was a big debate about whether it would be children or adults or a mixture of both, and we tried loads of stuff out. We did one workshop that was all kids, and then one workshop with no kids, and ended up with sort of a mixture of the two. So it's like little kids, like 11-year-olds, and then slightly older kids, like 15 to 18-year-olds.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And then young adults. And it just made this really great mix in the end of different people. So, so to answer your question, I was involved right from the very beginning on that.
So those songs that Robbie Williams wrote, did they already fit into that kind of musical style of songs? Did they kind of further the plot? You know,
most of them.
He'd already done all that kind of thing.
There were a couple that we changed the structure of, and we changed. I say we; they changed the lyrics, and there were a few that didn't make it in. Like there were just too many songs, which is an amazing
great that way round.
You know, and we ended up repurposing a couple of the songs they'd written in different points of the show, and then they wrote a new song at the last workshop that we did. So that was maybe 3 months before we started rehearsals, and it's really fun. It was really brilliant, and so we sort of scrambled everything around. But they, for the most part, they were really theatrical. And there's Chris Keith, who wrote some of the lyrics as well, is a proper writer. So there's some really clever stuff in there. And I was really surprised by how sophisticated loads of it was, because
Yeah.
I was slightly snobbishly, I was like, well, you know, pop composers can't write for musical theatre. and it wasn't like that at all. It's very catchy stuff, really, really good tunes.
Oh, that's great.
And they really work in the show, and they're very different to each other. It doesn't like feel like they're all the same sequence or all the same feel or anything like that. So
Was
yeah,
Robbie
it's really
knocking
good.
around in Stratford very much?
Not really. We saw a lot of Guy Chambers
Yeah.
was there a lot. He was
Great.
very involved. Robbie just kind of popped in
Yeah.
very occasionally.
Brilliant.
And my sort of like teenage self was like, oh my God. Because I was one of the people that was devastated when he left Take That.
I know.
Do you remember there was a helpline?
Absolutely.
Oh my days. And
They
so,
were
yeah,
never the
there's a-
same. It was never the same.
There's a really funny picture of me on opening night that made it onto like the What's on Stage official pictures, and it's David Williams, Guy Chambers, and Robbie Williams, and then there's me on the edge, and I honestly look like I've escaped from somewhere. I was like, oh God, I'm so mortified. But at the same time, I was like, if you told my little self that I'd be on a stage with Robbie,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have
Amazing.
believed it.
Amazing.
Is that the first time you've like been involved so much from the beginning? So where you're really working out, you know,
Yeah.
compositional things.
Yeah, I've done a few workshops. So I did the original Commitments workshop,
Yeah.
and helped Alan Williams to transcribe a lot of the songs and stuff, and it was just like, it was like a staged reading. And then I was offered Matilda during that, so I went to do Matilda.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I've done I was involved in a couple of the Groundhog Day workshops right at the start, but I've never done anything that's seen it all the way through to making the show.
Yeah.
And, so
That
it's
must
really
have been
cool.
an amazing feeling on opening night, wasn't it? To see it all come
Yeah.
together.
I mean, to be honest, I think we were just relieved to get it on the stage, because like there's a lot to tech 4 sets of children in, and you know, when everything's changing. So like during previews, there were things that really changed, and then we'd have to you have to teach the other 3 sets of children so they're just ready to go. So so I think we were all really relieved to get it on, but it was great. We had a few press nights, I think. So
Do you have one for each set of kids, or no? Just
no. It didn't quite work out like that, but it was quite fair. The way they all got to do something that was special. So like we divided it up quite fairly. So, but and it was cool that there's little bits that are definitely I sort of helped come up with them.
That's
and
cool.
that's quite cool.
Yeah.
Like, not that you get any extra money or anything like that. It's quite nice.
So, and on the show, were you playing piano on the show as well?
I was keys 2, yeah. So I was
Keys 2.
associate MD.
Yeah.
Keys 2, so got to play it every night, and I conducted it quite a lot.
Oh,
as
did
well,
you?
Which is really fun. Yeah,
That's great.
like much more than you normally would, I think, on a short run like that. But I did a lot because Alan went away to set up another show, so I looked after it for a bit.
He's always somewhere else, isn't he? He's got an
He's
eye
very
on
busy.
something else. He is
Very busy.
lad.
But yeah.
Oh, it was good to do a few shows in a row, though, isn't it? As an assistant MD.
Yeah, I mean, I got weeks on and weeks off. Like, it was great. And
great.
also, the third MD got to do quite a few as well, like much more than you normally would in a 3-month run. So,
I imagine that's quite tricky, isn't it? If you're just the assistant, no, I don't mean just the assistant, but you might get to conduct maybe once a week or something, and then every time it's a massive stress to.
it was like the first
remember how it all
time. It was like
goes and
Evita.
everything.
I only got to do Evita, 4 times or something.
Right,
and that was really hard. That was such a hard show to conduct. And I hadn't done a stick conduct for a long time because I've been doing Keys MD mostly. And so it was I put a lot of hours into just making sure that I could at least communicate what I thought.
Oh, you were great, though. You were great. But there were many
brilliant.
flipping variables on that show, weren't there? Like the click, for one.
Oh, God. Let's not talk about that. There was also one day where I had, because we had loads of covers on, didn't we? Because everyone got poorly. And there was one day where I had like 3 major covers, and maybe it was their first show or something. But I think it's easier, actually, if you don't do it all the time and you're not set in your ways, it's easier to react to what you can hear rather than you just go into what you know.
You're not using any muscle memory.
Yeah, because you just haven't had time to develop it. And and I learned it off 3 different videos. I had 3 different versions of it that I practiced to. So, and they were quite different to each other.
Oh,
so,
that's good.
That's a good idea to do that, I think,
definitely.
isn't it?
Yeah.
You can get. We talked about this before when we talked to Jackie. About this, when you get sent an MD cam to follow along, and you can get set into that exact performance. So then when you might have played it through like 4 or 5 times or something in preparation, and then you come to the actual thing, and then it's immediately different, obviously. So then it stresses you out.
Yeah, and it's funny, when you're a cover MD, I find it very strange as well. Like, I try and be super clear to the point of sometimes I look a bit like a lunatic, because I think I just need to try and be clear about what I think it is. And you're never going to look exactly the same as the person that you're covering for. And so I think you just have to develop your own way of being clear about it. And I was lucky on Evita because I got at least to do a rehearsal, like a sound check. I did one of the sound checks.
Yeah.
So then everybody kind of knew what to expect when I was stood up there the first time. But I mean, for me, because I'm always much shorter than the people that I cover for, so it's even things like that. I had to stand on a box so that everyone could see me. And it was on Matilda. I used to have a cushion because Laurie Perkins that does it is so tall.
Yes,
it's tall man.
And it's just even things like that. It's just you have to adjust where you do everything as well, so that people don't get too surprised, I think.
So with the boy in the dress, did you sort of decide you wanted to cover all the children's MD side of things?
They just asked me to do it. Yeah, so I ended up... so I've done loads of shows with kids because I'm good at it. And I really enjoy working with kids. I find them much easier than adults in lots of ways because for starters, they're used to learning. Yeah. And so it's quicker. And they're used to practicing, they're used to doing homework. Not that adult actors don't, but it's just a different style of learning, I think. And the other thing with kids is they don't tend to come with any agenda or any preconceptions about what they think it should be. Yeah. And so it just means that what you get out of them is much more honest and that they trust you. When you say, let's try this, and it might be a bit scary to them, they'll go, okay, I'll try it. Whereas some adults take a bit more persuading, I think. And so I've worked with kids for a really long time. I did the Sound of Music tour, and then I taught all the young kids on Shrek when it was in the West End. Then obviously Matilda, the whole different thing, but I was on that for 5 years.
Wow.
And then when I left Matilda, I tried to not work with children because I was like, I'm being put in a box and being pigeonholed, and I don't want to just work with kids. And so I sort of fought really hard against it and went and did some grown-up stuff. So I went and did a show called Our Ladies of Perpetual Succor, which was amazing. But the funniest thing to me, so I went in that rehearsal room and I swore and then apologised for it because I hadn't sworn for 8 years at work. And they were they dropped the C-bomb within 10 seconds in that show. And And they were like, "You're allowed to do that here." So that was great.
It was like Mary Poppins gone bad.
Oh my God. It was just like, it was really funny. And then, because I'm really sweary now, I think all the 8 years worth of swear words just came out real quick. But yeah, and then I was asked about Boy in the Dress, and it just sounded so great to me. And I actually was then like, do you know what? I've really missed working with kids.
Yeah.
And I've missed working with young people. And these kids were different because there were a lot of teenagers as well. So it's a slightly different vibe than the tiny kids that I work with on Matilda. But yeah. And
are they generally quite chilled out, or do you get much back chat?
They're really well behaved, actually.
Oh, good.
Like, it's different if you're
Homeschool?
teaching at, a theatre school at the weekend. Homeschool. Theatre school at the weekend, they might not be that well behaved because some of them don't want to be there. But generally, if they're in a top show, they want to be there,
really
and they
want
to
it.
learn. And I think there's a lot of people that aren't that great at working with kids, and I think there's a really fine line between treating them like they're kids, which I try and not do. But also you can't just assume everything's okay, because they're not always going to go, I'm really scared about this. There's been a lot of times where I've had to get a child on stage that has terrible stage fright, which is really bad. And there's stuff like that that's just, you just have to deal with kids in a different way, because I think that you don't want to, if a kid gets stage fright at the age of 11, it's really easy for that to then manifest in different ways, and become an anxiety disorder. And actually the great thing about Matilda was that they were very hot on that, and there was therapy available for the children.
That's brilliant.
And we were trained in such a language to make sure they were okay.
Because that's a huge responsibility, isn't it, on your shoulders? Sorry, pressure's on. But to bring them up in that way, it's it's like such a pastoral role, isn't it, actually? Yeah,
and also, there's an amazing team of chaperones, and usually a lot of the stage management as well are really involved in the kids' welfare, and because a lot of the kids are away from home, which is a whole big thing as well. They're not with their parents, which some of them love and some of them hate. And they've got to have school, and it's a big thing. There's a really fine line between being too supportive and not supportive enough, and too strict. And but I think as a team, you always find it on the big shows that are kid led. There's a nice cream van going past my window. I don't know if you heard.
How lovely.
This doesn't happen on Louis Theroux. Anyway, so I think it's to answer your question, Seb. Yes, they asked me to look after the kids.
Excellent. So they should,
and then it became a bigger role, I think, because I ended up doing a lot more as the associate. So
Matilda was such a fantastic project to do.
It was amazing.
Yes.
And the four girls won an Olivier, didn't they, together?
Yeah, they
each got one. They shared one, or however they.
It's really funny because we did Matilda did a video to thank the NHS, and so I said, would it be really cool if we could just get the original kids back, because the original adult cast all did it. And so I started doing Instagram messaging and all that. Anyway, because they're all 21 now, which made me want to throw up. They're 18 to 21 and older. So the oldest is 25, because it's 10 years. It's been on 10 years. And those four original girls, all of them I'm proud of. It's amazing. It makes me feel very old, but there's so many kids that I've trained on that show that are now doing other stuff, and they're just incredible, because they have to be to get into that show. And you become very paternal over them, really, I think, because you've got them there. But they're doing it some of them are movie stars now. It's just crazy.
Seriously.
But,
That's so cool. You can call in the favours. Some nice premieres and things.
Ask them to pay my credit card bill off. That'd be great. But yeah, and I teach at Arts Ed a lot now, and there's a lot of them now training at Arts Ed, and it's brilliant. And then some of the kids aren't doing anything to do with performing at all, and it was just an amazing thing that they did when they were younger. And but yeah, Matilda was it was really special. And I could have stayed.
Yeah, exactly. Was it a hard decision to leave?
It was. I could have stayed forever, and I got to a point. After about the second year, I thought, well, maybe it's time to just think about some of the stuff. Because when I got offered the job, because nobody knew how the show was going to run, so I didn't play in the band, but I was going to be the third MD. And then, so it ended up that I ended up being like the rehearsal room MD, because there's always rehearsals happening on that show.
Right.
It takes the kids 3 months to get ready. And so they'd said to me, it'll be about 18 hours a week. You'll still be able to go and dep on all your other shows and like do other stuff. I was like, yeah, brilliant. That sounds great. Anyway, so we start, and I'm working like 60-hour weeks most weeks. Yeah. I'm always there having to do the shows and doing rehearsals, like and it was way bigger than any of us ever thought. And then we started to bring on other staff because we were just getting so worn out by everything.
And was that when you were up in? Was that in London, or was that when you were up in Stratford? Or did you go to Stratford?
I didn't do it in Stratford. Yes. I watched it in Stratford. I went to see it in Stratford, and then I was brought on to open it in London.
Oh, great!
And I thought I would stay for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then, for one reason or another, in the second year, I thought I might leave. Financially, it just wasn't a good choice for me to give up that money.
Yeah.
And it got to, I sort of found the love for it again and just adored it. And then I had said to myself, once you get to your 10th set of children, which is nearly 300 kids, I think, I put into that show. Once you get to your 10th set of children, it's probably time to just say goodbye. And I gave them a really long notice period, and they cried. The producers cried when I gave my notice in. Because I think I was the only one that was left that had been there the whole time.
And that's a huge role, and they must have just relied on you so heavily to, when you're so good with the children, because it is really hard to find people who are just so naturally good and
also
know how to treat them. Yes.
That show is hard. Like, there's so many words in that show. And so there's a really specific way that you... and also the RSC has a voice department, which is really brilliant. So we'd work together to sort of get the kids as clear and as safe as possible, because it's a big sing as well for tiny lungs. And so we'd spend a lot of time getting those kids where they are, and the physical training those children have to do to be in that show as well is just full on.
Yeah.
But I always thought, like, people used to ask me about, they don't get paid enough. Kids don't get paid enough in shows, especially the kids in that show. And they'd ask me about it, and I definitely think they should be paid more. But in Matilda, they get such a training, like. So I teach them the same as I teach my degree students. They get RSC voice training, and the physical training that they get will stay with them forever. And so it used to just make me feel better about that at least they're getting this huge training that you'd pay quite a lot of money for that, Absolutely. And you can always tell Matilda kids, like, it was funny because I've left the show, I left the show 4 years ago now, and so the Boy in the Dress, we had a lot of old Matilda kids in. I don't know them anymore because I stopped conducting it a while ago now, because I still used to pop back in and do it even after I had left. And you can just tell, I'd be like, have they been in Matilda? Because I could tell straight away just the way that they sang, because it just, what we set up there.
Wow.
Just
what is it they do then? The way of intonating, or Is that
Yeah, they just have to be very clear. So there's so much diction work. Also, you kind of have to strip it back sometimes. So Boy in the Dress, because it's poppy, you don't need to clip every single word like they do in Matilda. So the kids that we had from Matilda, we had to undo some of the stuff that had been set up in them. But it's much better that way round than having to try and layer it on top. But it's an amazing, Matilda's an amazing show to work on, but it's like a lifestyle if you're one of the team that is running it, because you never leave the building, and it can be a bit all encompassing. So
I bet
it was a shock to leave, but yeah.
So do you tend to work, I know that was 10 years ago, maybe things have changed, but do you tend to work with a small team, or are you doing most of it yourself, training the kids up?
It tends to be that they have as few people on the team as possible, because it costs a lot of money. But so usually you have a kids director, a kids MD, and a kids sort of dance captain. Sometimes a director and kids choreographer can be the same, and sometimes the kids MD can be the assistant MD. But on a lot of the shows that I've done, it's because it's kids led. It's a completely separate team that does it. But like Boy in the Dress, we didn't have a separate kids MD because it wasn't. It didn't need to be like that, really.
Yeah.
So it sort of depends on the show. Matilda, when I was there, and I'm sure it's the same, we did end up having a team because it's too much for one person.
Project.
So there were lots of people who would come and play for rehearsals that I would then train up to be able to take the kids' calls. So that just meant there wasn't quite as much pressure on me, and I could attempt to occasionally have a night off.
What? A social life?
Yeah. So, and I also, like with kids, I just used to make them all their own album. So they'd have a Dropbox folder that was all of their harmony lines, that was me singing everything.
Ah, brilliant.
So that then it meant that they would just learn it from me. It was quite funny, Matilda, because there's one of the recordings where my accent went a bit northern. And so I thought, and they were all going, why are they saying my mummy instead of my mummy at the very beginning? I was like, oh, sorry guys. But it's a good system if you don't let your own accent.
That's good.
I love it that you've trained up a whole load of Matildas with northern accents. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Some of them have different regional accents. I think Bruce is allowed to have something.
Yeah,
right?
Matilda's meant to be they're meant to be from sort of Essex-ish, I think. But the other kids are all allowed to have regional accents. So so that's fine.
Yeah.
But
you get some great ones with the Bruces.
Oh God,
sort of Northern Irish
so funny. They're so funny.
Being an MD, where on earth did this come from? What did you always think you would be, or what was your starting point?
Well, I wasn't going to be a musician, actually. Ooh. I was going to be a doctor.
Wow.
So I did.
Wow.
Yeah. I was very good at academic stuff at school, so I loved science. I loved everything like that. And for as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a doctor. And I sat down, I had my UCAS form in the old days where you used to have to handwrite it and do like your personal statement and stuff.
Yeah.
And I had it all ready. And my dad came in and had a chat with me, and he said, I don't think you should do that. He said, I don't think you should go and do medicine. I think you love music and you should pursue that. Which is an amazing thing for a parent to say. And he said, if it doesn't work out, then you can go back and retrain. So that was great. But I used to do all the shows and stuff at school. And I had amazing music teachers. I just went to like a normal comprehensive school, which just happened to have the most brilliant music department. And they didn't offer GCSE music, and my teacher stayed behind when I was in year 9, and we took it in year 9.
Oh,
Wow.
And she stayed behind, and she was my personal tutor for that, and it was incredible. And then my other music teacher at the same school suggested that I auditioned for National Youth Music Theatre, which have young people doing everything, not just the acting. So they have young people backstage learning those roles, young musicians. And so I got in as a musician, and it was amazing. I did 3 shows with them, and it's been indirectly responsible for everything I've done since, because I met Jonathan Gill, who's an MD on that, and that's where I met Alan Williams. Who have both been responsible either directly or indirectly for everything that I've done since. So I did a bit of conducting at university because I did composition at uni, and my tutor was also a conductor, so he was like, let's do some lessons. So we did that. And then I assisted at National Youth Music Theatre, so I got to conduct at the Peacock Theatre when I was like 19, which is crackers.
Yeah.
It was so good. And then just got into it from there. So I was like assisting people and doing drama school shows, which are brilliant because you're sort of left to it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's really good to sort of develop your craft, I think, as well as teaching a lot to the students who are paying a lot of money to be there. So I sort of did that, and then was depping about everywhere. I used to dep all the time. And it just worked my way up. I love being an MD because I love... I really like teaching, and I think it's that, like, the MD doesn't just conduct the show. Like, there's so much more to it, and so I find how music fits together really fascinating. And I'm also really fascinated by voices and sort of how you can use voices to make things sound completely different. And I love arranging as well. I love doing vocal arrangements and orchestrations and things, which I also did at university. Yeah. And so I was really fascinated by that. And I've been dead lucky, I think, because I've played in lots of rehearsals. So the brilliant thing about being a pianist in this industry is you get to do things that other players in the orchestra maybe don't, because you get to be in all the rehearsals, and you quite often just get to play for auditions. And it's
that must be so interesting, isn't it, as well?
It's amazing. And also just when you're playing, watching different MDs teach, you just learn so much stuff about what works, what doesn't, how to fix stuff. I mean, everything that I do is stolen from all the people that I've watched. Like, you know, and you just make it work.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I think everyone does that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, it's just I've just kept doing it, I think, and just taken whatever has come my way, even though it might have been really terrifying, which some of the things were. But and there was a lot of third MDing. So when I first, I think when you end up being a children's MD, it usually goes with being the third MD as well,
right?
Which is quite good because it's weirdly less pressure, I think, if you're the third MD, because you do it far less, and so people will forgive you a bit more, I think. Because it's really hard, like being up in front of a big group of musicians can be really scary sometimes.
I bet it is. I bet it is. God, you feel bad enough just going into dep on a show when you're sat quietly in your section, but flipping hell, that's exposing, isn't it?
I bet, because when you're in the orchestra and you're doing it for a long time, you don't really look up at all, do you? By a few months in, and I remember this on a show before where I think the MD was just getting stressed out because no one would have their instruments anywhere near them like literally 2 bars before, and then. But no one ever missed an entry. But it's it just stresses you out, doesn't it? If you're not, are they going to play? Are they going to play?
Yeah.
And then they do.
It's more stressful if it so I've done a lot of keys MD, and at least if you're on the keys, you can kind of do something. If something goes wrong, it's a bit easier to get something back to where you need. But if it's just you and a baton, it's much harder to try and get something back on track. And I've been really lucky because most of the bands that I've worked with and had to stand up in front of usually really care about the show. And so then they'll get you back on track, and it's great. But I mean, it can be so scary. Like, you know, if you misfire a click, or like if you're just thinking about something else just for a little second, or you turn 2 pages at once and you don't really know it well enough. Like,
have you got game face? Have you got a game face for that?
My face gives everything away. It's, you know. The other thing as well is if you're doing piano MD, keys MD, and you're depping, if you get onto the wrong sound as well, and you're in charge of everyone else, and you're on the wrong patch, and you're looking at it going, how do I get back?
God,
there's so many things, and some shows where you've got to operate a camera, because if you're remote, you have to have the camera in the right place, and God, there's so many things, but
it's actually making my palms sweat talking about it.
I think it's also just how do you deal with it? Like, if it's your fault, you kind of got it. You go and practice, and you don't do it again. But you can't. You just got to get on with the rest of the show and go and apologise to whoever it affected afterwards. It's different if it's not your fault.
No.
That's a bit harder, and it can be tricky being an assistant or a third MD. If you've got a problematic player, for example, which can happen, you're the boss that day, but you're not the boss overall, and that can be quite hard to manage sometimes, because you can feel like, again, when you don't do it all the time, you can feel like you've made that mistake happen, even if it wasn't your fault.
Yeah, any of those mistakes, even if it's not your fault, you can't stop thinking. I have this sometimes in a show. I had it recently, and an MD, they just didn't give me a proper count in, and it was just like a nod, and it usually is a count in, and I wasn't ready because I didn't have the usual cues, so. But then the rest of the show, I'm just thinking over and over in my head, like, oh, messed up.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it wasn't my fault, but you can't help it.
It's horrible,
Absolutely.
isn't it? Like, your heart's in your mouth, because
horrible.
You know, it's really difficult. And also, my attitude to depping has changed since I've started MDing a lot more. Because I used to dep on so many shows, and I loved it. It was just like water off a duck's back. But I haven't depped very much since conducting, and I think it's because I'm very aware of... I'm much more aware of how everyone else listens. And I got really, I got myself into a right state about it, which is weird because I'm fine to go and be a dep MD. But, to go and dep on a keys part or whatever, I find it really, really scary to do that now.
Well, you mean that everyone else in the band are listening out for the deps?
Yeah, it's just funny, and so I think also because there've been some shows that I did on Matilda where there was a weird combination of deps in, or you know, some things happen that aren't quite in your control, and it goes wrong, and I don't know. It's just. Depping is so scary anyway, isn't it? Why do we do it? If you take everything to heart, or you over-analyse everything that you do, you'd never leave the house. You'd have to go and do something else, I think, because that is what we do. And when it's great, it's amazing, isn't it? I was thinking the other day just how much I really miss just playing music with other people in the same room. It's so much fun. And and we're so lucky to do it, and it's important. I think it's really important to people that we do it as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
I think people are trying their best to get theatre going again, aren't they?
I know, it's going to be
What's
weird.
Angelo Weber doing? He's trying to get something on at the Palladium, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's doing, because they've done something in Korea, haven't they? And it's about how you manage like taking people's temperatures and stuff like that. I think it's brilliant though. It's much better to have proactive people trying to figure out solutions than people going, everything's gonna die.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh.
It seems like, in my simple mind, all you literally need is a big PA, and that's all you'd really need, really, because then, and maybe some screens so people can see, but then people could be spread out, for ages.
Yeah.
And then you can,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
we could be a remote band from home, couldn't we? I always think that. If you've got a remote band under the stage, you could definitely do it from your own house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or from like the Bahamas with a margarita or something. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Definitely, that should be written in.
Obviously, like, Zoom doesn't work, so there's a bit of a delay, isn't there? But maybe if we set up like a system of wires that are stretched from the West End to South East London, North East London. Are you up in Hertfordshire somewhere? Is that right?
Bedfordshire.
Yeah.
Bedfordshire. Yeah, so just like spreads across. I mean, it's a lot of wires, but then I guess there'd be no delay. I'm not really much of a.
I think also it makes a difference if you've got an Ethernet connection. That slows down the delay. So I think there's a way of doing it if you're directly plugged into the internet.
I mean, after however many weeks we've done of this, we should really be all over that, shouldn't we?
Be.
But
you know what? I've actually got an Ethernet cable and it's just not plugged in.
Well, there we are.
Give it a go. I think the problem is that everyone needs to have one.
Everyone needs to be on it, yeah.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's a nightmare.
Now, I wanted to ask. This is a bit of a serious issue, actually.
Okay.
It's quite a male-dominated thing, isn't it? MDing.
Yeah.
A couple of female MDs I could think of, but there's not many of you anyway.
It is changing at the moment. So there's quite a few brilliant sort of organisations and things that are changing things. So I'm part of something called Ladies of the Stave, which is a networking thing for female musicians and female MDs. And there's like a Facebook group run by Georgia Stitt that's called Maestra MDs. And then we've got a UK one that me and Caroline Humphreys run.
Oh, brilliant.
And it is getting better. I think at the moment we're in a stage of, it's sort of weird. I've never thought about being a woman doing this job until maybe the last 3 years, because it's suddenly come into focus, because I've been really lucky with work. I've got to do what I do, and I've worked really hard at it and just done the best job that I can do.
Yeah. And
I'd never thought about why I'm there. And there's a weird thing at the moment where now shows are, there's shows like Waitress that specifically have a female MD. Which is brilliant, but what it does is you can go, am I just now here to tick a box, which can feel a bit strange. But at the same time, you kind of, if you're in the door and you've got there, just do the best, like do the best job, and prove that you're there because you've got asked to be there, and like it's great. And so it's it can be a bit daunting sometimes if you're in charge of a mostly male band. That can be a bit weird. But I personally, and I can only speak for myself, like I can't speak for all female MDs in the industry. I haven't really had any problems from male musicians, and it's always been really supportive. I think that, the one thing that happened to me, I was thinking about it today, was, I guess I never wear anything remotely low cut when I'm MDing, and it was because I was told on a show that I did that I won't name, that there was a group of crew gathered round a monitor watching my chest jiggle up and down.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
And it really made me feel quite gross.
Yeah.
It made me feel really dirty. And so then I just, not that I ever, like, I wasn't going around with my boobs out, you know, but it really made me change the way that I dressed at work.
Yeah, how awful,
you know,
though,
stuff like that can happen.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes that I've been in interviews where male music supervisors have been quite patronising and sort of like, I remember one saying to me, you know, this is going to be a long run. It's going to go on for a year. It's not like one of your little drama school shows. And I was like, yes, I know.
yeah.
But, you know, who knows whether they would have said that to a younger guy either. I don't know if that was particularly about my gender. But I do think it's improving, and I think there's a lot of amazing female MDs out there, and I think just places are getting better at sort of diversifying, and it's also about if you can see someone that's doing it, you might go, oh, well, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And so, like, at Matilda, I would remember talking to one of the little... I mean, she was tiny. She was, like, 9. And I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, I want to be a conductor like you are. And I got really choked up about it because I'd never had that. I'd never seen anybody do that job when I was younger because it was always... The shows that I went to see always had a male MD. So I think it's just slowly changing. I mean, there's a much bigger problem in our industry that it's like very white. So I think that's like we've got to start doing better at that as well. But yeah, I think there's also a lot of courses out there now, which I never did actually. But I think there was a problem with no women being accepted onto those MDing courses, and I think that's now improving. And
good.
So and then hopefully in like a few years it'll be a thing where it's not remarkable to have a female MD. Well, there's a lot of female MDs on Broadway compared to here.
Oh, really? That's great.
Which is really cool.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It was funny when we were doing Evita and Tim Sheeder came to watch one of the shows that I did. He's the artistic director there. And he said, it's so brilliant to see a woman up there conducting. And I just wanted to go, well, you run this place. So, like, you could, you could just get some more women in. I think Kathy Jays does a lot there, actually. So I think they do get women in. So maybe that's a bit unfair. But it was just a weird thing for him to say. Because I was like, yes, it is great. But at the same time, like you're one of the people that could make it better.
Well, I hope that's stuck in his mind then.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. I remember there was a bit of a outcry about the National Theatre a couple of years ago. They announced a season and there was like 1 or 2 women on all the creative lists of people involved in anything. Surely now, after what's happened, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement and lots of and in the last few days, a lot of people in the comedy world have been talking about sexism.
Oh, yeah.
And surely if you're running any kind of arts venue, that's got to be at the absolute top of your agenda, isn't it? To
think,
show what we can do as an industry.
I think as a music industry, there's also a problem with, I think, music colleges, actually, and even in primary schools, like, because music doesn't get taught in school as much. There's just not as much opportunity. And I think there's a big, wide conversation that needs to happen about how we improve education and making it available for everybody. And then sort of it's the same thing. It's I think if you can see someone that looks like you doing the thing that you want to do, you're going to try and do it. And so it's been really nice. Like, I've mentored quite a lot of younger female MDs, which it's been a real privilege to do that, and I think we sort of have to do that for each other as well. And I've mentored male MGs as well. But like, I think, you know, a lot of I've had quite a lot of women come to me and just say, I want to do what you do, how do I do it? And I can only say, this is how I did it, and then I'll maybe recommend them for some work or whatever. But I think we all have to do that, don't we? We've got to look out for each other.
Yeah, quite right.
But yeah,
Send the elevator back down.
sorry.
Yes.
Have you heard that phrase? To send the elevator back down.
Oh yes,
Like, you know, look out for the
that's good. I like
the next
that.
generation. Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah, I think it's really important to pay it forward again, isn't it? Like, you know, because Jonathan Gill and Alan Williams, I'll be forever grateful to them, and to be able to then try and do that for someone else is kind of really special, because it just keeps it moving, you know. And also, like, it is tricky as well, isn't it? Because nobody's at the 100% of their knowledge. Like, every single job I do, I learn more. I learn how to do more stuff, and I find out more stuff that I'm not very good at, and I need to do, like, learning the accordion, for example.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
You said not to mention that, Verity.
Me and Theresa May. Oh.
The lovely Teresa. Yeah. Has she been out? Has she been out during lockdown?
No, I gave her back.
No.
I gave her back to the person I borrowed her from. But yeah, you're always learning, aren't you? So it's good to try and teach other people while you're learning, I think.
Honestly, Laura, your face when you used to get that accordion out.
God.
I mean, hate doesn't come close,
so
does it?
stressful. Like, I would much rather conduct that show, which was really hard and I didn't get to do it very much, than play the accordion at any point.
But can I just say that it was really very good? Like, you could play it. If I had a go on that.
Yeah, very funny.
Yeah.
I got better at it. There were some times where, and also, like, when you just got a piano, it just does what you ask it to do. Sometimes, like, you're on the wrong patch or whatever, but you know you can fix that. The accordion, sometimes it just wouldn't do what I wanted it to do, and I just didn't know the instrument well enough to go, this is how I fix that.
Sometimes it lets out involuntary noises, doesn't it? I noticed. Not from you. I was actually thinking about when Hugh came in to cover one day, and he'd done this lovely job. He just played one of the little accordion solos, and it was beautiful. And I think maybe there was a moment of relaxation. We went, phew, that's done. And it just sort of let out this merp.
I'm surprised they didn't catch me swearing into the mic. every time I have to do something, I'm just like, effing this or whatever. I hate it. I'm learning how to count in 7/8. They're the two things I'll take away from that show.
It was the click on that number, wasn't
my
it?
gosh.
And the money kept rolling in.
Yeah. And that day,
Do you have to fire it a couple of times in the song, or is it
you have
just you got
to
to
do
get it once?
It was the
and then
first
it's
time
set?
that I conducted, and I did my upbeat and didn't fire the click at the right time because I hadn't practiced it. There was a one click that I hadn't practiced firing. I'd done all the other ones, but everyone stuck with it. Everyone had to concentrate dead hard. It was really good.
Yeah.
And Alan was like,
Try not to just all
he was
rush.
funny. Alan was like, the singing sounded weird. And I was like, yeah. Sorry.
No click.
But, you know, there's a lot to think about. You've got to be really coordinated, you know. I often think it's like flying a plane. Like, I mean, obviously it must be harder to fly a plane than to end a show.
Oh, good God.
No, I don't think so.
Sorry, I forgot to fire up the engine today. Nothing. Don't worry.
Don't worry.
So earlier on, Seb pointed me in the direction of the film Pride, which
yeah.
I
Yes.
gather you MD'd a scene, like a really big
did.
scene in that.
It was the big scene where they all sing in the Working Man's Club.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I watched it earlier.
was
It's so
amazing.
great.
It was
I love
a
that film
really
so much.
crazy experience.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to expect. So I went, I did some rehearsals. Chris Nightingale asked me to do it. So I'd worked with him on Matilda. And he said, I'd really love you to come and help me with this scene. So I said, cool. And he sent me the song. He said, this is what it is. And then I ended up transcribing it for him because he just didn't have time. So I did that. And then I had to go and do this like crazy rehearsal. I had to teach it to all the actors. It was like Imelda Staunton and Bill Nighy, like all these people. And I walked into the Dominic West was there, like Andrew Scott. I was like,
oh my God.
But, so I walked into the room and I sort of had an out-of-body experience and then just taught them the song, and it was gorgeous. Like, it was really good. It worked. And Matthew Watchus, who was the director, was really happy. And then I had to go and teach. So Chris had said to me, there's going to be about 30 extras in it. So would you mind teaching them the songs? Cool. So we did it in this studio on like Bond Street or something. I went and taught all the extras. Brilliant. Got there on the day and we had to be there at like 6 a.m. And then it's bonkers. And Matthew, the director, said, so this scene's going to be a little bit bigger than we thought. And there were like 200 extras.
Oh my God.
And he said, can you teach them the song? And I was like, okay, great. And so I had to teach them all this song. And then it was all led by this one girl, but they didn't have earpieces for everyone. So I was like, how is everyone going to stay in time for the edit? Because if they haven't got earpieces, we can't put a click through or anything like that. And so we did all these different takes. So I'm basically the stage that's in the club. I'm behind a curtain on that, playing the piano into this girl's ear. And we did loads of takes where the piano was live, so they got all of their voices and didn't use the sound. And then we had to do a few takes unaccompanied, and I conducted them. So I'm stood on a bench on the other side, conducting all these people. Yeah, we had to do all these different things. It was brilliant, and it was in this it's in an old factory in Slough or something like that.
Right.
The set, yeah.
So it was a complete set. It wasn't a real club.
No, it was a set. They just put this set in there. But yeah, it was pretty bonkers, but it's beautiful. I think that the film is beautiful. I'm really proud to have been part of it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go and watch it all now.
Oh, it's so good.
Having seen that scene,
film.
Yeah.
I got to go and have a little listen when they were recording the soundtrack with the brass band.
Wow.
I got to go to the studios and see all that happen, because I've never done like sessions for films or anything like that. So I was just fascinated, and Chris went, come and have a listen.
Was it Tredegar Brass Band who did it?
Yeah, they're amazing.
Because they play on that scene as well. They come in and
they play all the way through.
Cornet on that. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's so good. And it was Simon Lenton did all the arrangements for it, who's trumpet number one at Matilda. Yeah. But it was a really kind of brilliant thing to be involved in, and the film is beautiful. I think it's a really beautiful film. So unfortunately, what happened was, though, I was really busy with something else at the time, and I didn't get my details in to say which bit I'd done to the people who were doing the credits. So I'm at the very end, like I get a thank you because I just didn't get my arse in gear, so I don't get credit for MDing that scene.
What?
I definitely did it. I was there.
Yeah.
So.
Are you still running, Laura?
I am not. I got a bit after I did the marathon. I did my hip in doing the London Marathon.
Oh no!
And it's taken me a really long time to get over it. But the thing that I have been doing, so since we locked down on March the 13th, I think, every single day I've done 2 exercise videos.
Oh, well done.
And I've got really
2?
into, so I do 2 like half-hour ones. I've got really into kickboxing. I'm probably terrible at it. If I was to do it in like a studio bit, but in my living room, I think I'm amazing. And so I got really into that.
You must be by now.
Yeah.
And also, the thing that it's taught me is that for 38 years, I've had no core strength at all. So I've really been working on that, which has been great. And actually, weirdly, it's fixed my hip. because my body's all
there's a lot of
working
hip
properly.
action with that, isn't there? The old kicking.
So I think I'm going to try slowly but surely getting out running again, because I really have missed it. So I'm gonna do that, and then
brilliant.
Yeah, note to everyone else, don't cross her now. She's kicking hard.
No, I'm really good at kicking the air. I don't think I'd be great at like kicking an actual thing. I'm good at like kicking to a routine.
Yeah, so let's go out with like a jukebox, maybe. Go crazy.
I can kick you to my tunes. It'll be great. I've punched myself in the face a few times as well. I'm such a klutz.
Brilliant.
There was one day I punched myself in the chin. I was like, this is like a low point in isolation. Like, it's got to that point where I'm punching myself. Brilliant.
Here, Laura, have you got any songs in particular you're listening to at the moment? We've got this Spotify playlist. I don't know if you've heard it. It's great. Do you want to add any tunes to it for us?
I mean, I didn't listen to music for quite a long time, so I've been listening to loads of podcasts, which I'm not going to plug on your podcast because that wouldn't be right. Because I've been on my own, it's helped me to feel like there's someone else here.
Yes, absolutely.
Really sad.
It does.
But I have been listening to it. So I love film soundtracks. And so if I'm feeling a bit low, I'll quite often turn to film soundtracks. So the one that I've been loving at the moment is the soundtrack to Saving Mr. Banks. I don't know if you've seen that film.
I don't know it.
Yeah.
It's by Thomas Newman. It's a beautiful soundtrack, but there's also a couple of things in it there's a couple of like jazz standards, and there's also a tune from Dave Does Disney, which is Dave Brubeck's Disney album, which got me into that as well. So I've been listening to some sound. I love the soundtrack to The King's Speech as well.
Oh yeah, beautiful,
it's really beautiful, and that's also got some beautiful.
Who composed that music?
I think that was Alexander Desplat. Yeah.
Right.
There's also some beautiful bits of Beethoven in that, and
is it
good.
What's the bit from a symphony, the slow movement?
I think it's the symphony.
Is it 8 or 9 or not 9?
Pathétique.
Pathétique.
Yeah.
There we go. That's in it.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if you've heard of a singer called Blossom Dearie.
No.
Ever heard of her? So she is like an old jazz singer, and I am obsessed with The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I don't know if you've watched it. On Amazon Prime. No. It's really good. It's about a female stand-up comic in New York, sort of in the 50s. And the soundtrack to it is amazing, but they use quite a lot of Blossom Dearie stuff. It's just like a little jazz trio, and her voice is like, she's not the best singer at all, but she's dead funny, and just the way she interprets stuff. I found it really calming to listen to that. That's what I've been listening to.
Very good. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, yes, there we go.
Oh, thanks, Laura. So brilliant to see her again, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, she's a very entertaining person to talk to, and she's done so much great stuff. It was good to chat to her about all that. And,
I knew that she'd worked extensively with children, but when she was talking about Matilda and all of the stuff she was doing there, it's a huge job, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It seems like she sort of was mostly doing it on her own. I'm sure she had lots of help, but a big responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for those kids, like they're growing up doing those shows, and for them, she must be like this huge figure in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be so pleased if it was me and she was the person who was sort of starting me out in my musical career, because she's so enthusiastic but incredibly knowledgeable. And just, well, even when she's talking about it, you can tell she just knows her stuff. She's brilliant.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. Thank you for chatting to us. And thanks for listening. And we've got, as always, we've got our Spotify playlist, which is available all the time.
She's added some nice things to that, hasn't she, today?
Yeah, there's some good stuff.
Yeah.
Please help us raise the profile of this show if you can.
Yes.
As a dear listener, if you could just, tell someone about it, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell her, maybe retweet it. Maybe just like it.
Yeah.
Give us a like.
Now that you're back out in the pubs, probably pub gardens and things, have a really loud conversation about it maybe, and just, throw in words like 5-star and...
Yeah. Hey, have you heard this new podcast thing?
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, it's called 3 in a Bar. What's
scintillating.
Yeah, it's really funny and insightful.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, it's great. Go on, do that. Do that for us.
Or you could go on to your podcast app and give us 5 stars.
Oh, that would be nice too.
And a short review backing up those 5 stars.
Yeah.
Hey, this is one of those sort of pre-recorded ones because I'm sort of off having a baby. So can't really talk about things we've done this week.
No. But now that we're mid-August, the baby will have arrived for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So congratulations, your future self.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So exciting.
It's quite a monumental change in my life, so it's hard to put myself in the mind of what it'll be like in mid-August. But I'm not going to be some sort of witch foretelling what will be happening. I can only say I hope sleep is a joy and all. Yeah. I'm trying to get that sleep in now. Oh, it'll be so wonderful. It's just such a joyous bubble to be in. I remember so clearly. I think really fondly. I've got totally rose-tinted glasses about that time. And I just remember it being such a wonderful time where you're in your family unit and you're together all the time, and it's just a beautiful thing. So I'm quite envious of you in many ways. Oh, well, yeah. It's incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
And there we go. We'll see what happens. So, what about you, Verity?
Well, what am I doing right now? I'm really hoping I'm on holiday, actually. We're just looking into that. Back in old self me in July is looking into the prospect of going away. We're thinking about getting some crafty ferry over to France and driving down and staying somewhere lovely.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I think I'm trying to be all chilled about it and think, just book it, it'll be fine. But, my organisational self isn't.
Oh, that sounds so nice.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I was sort of fantasising about when it was like the height of lockdown, where you couldn't go out at all. I just could fantasise about getting in the car, driving to Dover, getting on a ferry, and then just driving to the Dordogne.
Yes, exactly that.
And just getting in the river there in a canoe or something, and just being down there in the heat and drinking red wine and eating cheese and
steak,
foie gras,
steak and frites.
Steak.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know why I thought that.
On.
It's obviously sort of memories from childhood.
Yeah, exactly. I've started watching Race Across the World for that very reason, because I was so desperate to go away at the height of lockdown and being stuck in the house and barely going out. So we speed watched the whole of both series of Race Across the World, which is fantastic, may I say. It was like holiday.
Is that the Ewan McGregor one?
No, this is the one where it's a competition. So they have 4 different pairs of it, like a mother and a son and 2 brothers, whatever, and they race from one set point. Well, the best one's the first one, where they go from London all the way to Singapore. Loved it.
And what are the rules?
You can they give the money, which is the same amount as the airfare to get there, but you're not allowed to travel by air. It has to all be done by land or sea. So, right. And so they've got to eke out this budget, and they have to work along the way. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Oh, great.
Yeah. That'll make some great late night watching for you. If you haven't seen that, Seb, when the baby's little and you're up in the night and Charlotte. You know, you can. It's a great thing to watch because it requires very little concentration, but it looks lovely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Well, I'll check it out. Check it out in August.
Yeah, do it.
I'll save it for then. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks to Laura and for everyone involved in this process.
That's the two of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh no, and our guests, obviously.
And our guests, yeah. Thanks to you, Verity.
Yeah. Well, thanks to you, Seb. It's a pleasure, always. And we'll be back next week when we hit our 20s.
We'll be back. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just see who it is so I can
know who
give
it
away.
is.
Oh, I know. Oh, I remember now. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody who's going to take us into the hedonistic 20s, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. He or she is.
Or yes. Well, I'll see you then.
I'll see you then. See you next Monday.
Lovely.
All right.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.